What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Too Pop to Handle. I'm your host, Andrew Nucatola, your pop culture best friend. And as always, I hope you guys are having a fabulous week. For one, I'm a little confused this week. I'm a little perplexed at what is happening in New York City over the last few days. So Saturday, I go outside, I walk 3 miles in a light jacket and a hoodie. It is beautiful outside. It was gorgeous. The snow is melting, the birds are chirping, the sun is shining, fabulous weather. And then I look on my phone and it says blizzard warning for tomorrow for Sunday. And I just had to sit there and think, were the AI caricatures you guys were all making on ChatGPT worth this back and forth weather that we're getting? Like, did Mother Nature, has she not scared you enough where like she is literally being like, oh, you guys want to fuck around and use ChatGPT to make a grocery list? Watch, you're going to get 50 degrees one day, blizzard the next. And somebody was in my TikTok comments being smart and they were like, this is just New York, babe. Like this is how New York functions. This is not New York functioning the way that New York functions, because I understand the way New York functions with the weather. Like I know I'm going to wake up in April with a winter jacket on, be sweating by noon, and then be freezing by dinner. Like I know that is how the seasons change throughout the day in New York, but going from 50 degrees to a blizzard, the first blizzard in 9 years, mind you, the planet is dying. Like we needed to listen to Miley Cyrus, Wake Up America, Send It On. Like we needed to, really have our ears perked up when they were telling us to reduce, reuse, recycle back in the day, because now look at us. Like now the weather is truly all over the place. And like, I hope you guys are happy. Like, it is crazy what is happening. We were snowed in all weekend because it was just insane weather. However, I will say, Mr. Mamdani, my mayor, the mayor of the world, he did an excellent job at cleaning up the city for this snowstorm. Like they're usually in the city, you are walking through like sludge and ice and gross water for days after a snowstorm. We had a full-fledged blizzard out there. We had and yet I can walk. I went to work in sneakers today because the ground is so clear. Like Zohran Mamdani, whatever you were doing as mayor, you've only been in office for a month and change. Keep it up. He is doing wonders for this city. Even that whole initiative of like, if you wanted to make some extra cash, they were hiring emergency snow shovelers, $30 an hour. Not a bad gig to go shovel some snow for a couple of hours. Like I wasn't going to do it, but like if you need some extra cash, like that is a nice little hefty, chunk of change in your pocket. Zohran, you will always be famous. I am so thrilled to call that man my mayor. That little cutie patootie, he knows what he's doing at the Gracie Mansion. He is just the bee's knees, and I am thrilled that we are, at least, if we're going to live through a blizzard in New York City, I'm at least glad it's in Zohran's New York, But before I got snowed in, I had a very exciting week last week. I was collecting girl group members, like Infinity Stones, not on purpose. This was totally on accident. But on Wednesday night, I won the lottery to go see Death Becomes Her on Broadway, which I've been dying to see. I actually won the lottery for this twice, and both times it got canceled when I won it. So I just had this running joke of I am only going to see the show if I win the lottery out of principle. And let me tell you guys, it was worth the wait. This show was incredible, let alone the costumes. Costumes by Paul Tazewell, hello. But the costumes, the stage design, the production of the show was so grand and so big. It was truly theater. It felt like very much like Harry Styles. This is a movie that feels like a movie. This is a Broadway show that feels like a Broadway show. It was fabulous. And I talked a lot about how there's so many shows these days that are very simple with their set design, with their costumes. And it's because, it kind of lets the audience member think and imagine more. And Sunset Boulevard, for example, was very stripped back, very simple, but it was so artistic and so beautifully done. And, it really made you think with it. You had to kind of use your imagination as to what was happening on stage. And it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But going from seeing a Sunset Boulevard, or even I saw that new musical, Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York, which I absolutely loved. Actually, it just got extended through November. And if you have not seen it yet, definitely add it to your list. It was wonderful and just really nice to see a new concept on stage. I absolutely loved it, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Death Becomes Her. Seeing a show as grand as Death Becomes Her, and the theatrics and the special effects and the costumes and the vocals, Michelle fucking Williams, the star that you are, being able to watch a member of Destiny's Child on a random Wednesday night is truly why I love this city so much. Like, it was such a treat to be able to sit there and just watch Michelle Williams sing her face off for the hour and change, 2 hours, however long the show was. I could have sat there for 4 more hours and just listened to her, and even Betsy Wolfe, Jennifer Snard. Like, I could have listened to the three of them sing for 6 hours and I would have been entertained. They were so incredible. Their talent is just on a level that is so admirable. And like, I know Jennifer and Michelle are original Broadway cast, but Betsy is newer to the show. She just joined in December or January, replacing Megan Hilty, who I would have loved to see in this show. But Betsy was unbelievable in this show. The entire cast was truly incredible. And if you've been thinking about going to see it, trust me, just buy the ticket. It is worth every single penny. It was fantastic. I laughed. I was glued to the screen, the stage the entire time. It was fabulous. And then Thursday night, on the topic of collecting ex-girl group members like Infinity Stones, I had a big night Thursday night. If you follow me anywhere else, you know, I saw Jade Thirlwall at the Brooklyn Paramount on Thursday night. I saw my favorite album of 2025, That Showbiz Baby, on stage. And there are not enough words in the dictionary to describe how incredible Jade and this show was. Like, she was just on a level that there's no other word than mother. Like, she was unbelievable. She, you know, thinking about Jade and her career and like the landscape of being in Little Mix and then going solo and just kind of, you know, going on these endeavors or whatever, like seeing her on that stage with such a clear vision and a clear artistic direction for this album, for the tour, with the outfit, the choreography, everything she did was just so well constructed, if that's the right word. Her vocals, unbelievable. She sounded incredible. She had this whole little part where she did this like giant mashup of a bunch of different songs, and it was like so high energy, so much fun. The show was just so gay and fun and celebratory, and like you can tell how proud she is of this album and how happy she was to be up on that stage. And if you know that I have been raving about this album for months. Like, it has, even before the album came out, when Angel in My Dreams dropped, I was like, you guys keep an eye on this because it is going to be unbelievable. This album, this tour, this show, Jade, everything about it was just next level. And like, I'm almost upset that it was the final show of the tour because I wanted to come on here and be like, go buy your tickets, go see this show. However, she is now going international, and I believe she's doing a bunch of festivals overseas for the rest of the year. If she announces a show near you, if you are overseas and have the opportunity to go see her, trust me when I say it is worth every single penny to go see this show. It was incredible. And like, yes, I am biased because That Showbiz Baby is my favorite album of 2025, but for good reason. Seeing these songs come to life and just seeing the stage production and the way that she just like, even like she played Self-Saboteur into lip service, and it was so, just like the way that transition happens and she does it live, and like, it was just so, oh my God, I could go on for hours about this show because I just loved it so much. Jade, you are a star. I know you're not listening to this, but if you've ever made it across your desk, just know, if you have 0 fans, I am dead. If you have 1 fan, it is me. Like, I cannot get enough of this diva, and it was truly a perfect show. I had the time of my life. And now, before we get into the show, I do have some very exciting housekeeping things to share with you guys. 2 things on the docket. Number 1, if you are in New York City or the New York City area, or you feel ever so inclined to travel, I am doing a live show and I am so excited. One of my friends is hosting a new monthly pop culture series where she is having somebody come in and do guest speaking. It's called Pop Talks, and I am the first person to kick off the series. I am so honored to be the first one to do it and so thrilled to just like get on a stage and chat with you guys. I feel like my inner theater kid from high school is really about to jump out, and I am so excited. The show is going to be on March 21st. It's a Saturday night at Grove 34 in Astoria. Tickets are on sale now. I'll have them linked down below. I have them linked on my Instagram, on my Substack. Anywhere I can link this show, I will have it linked for you guys. I am so excited. The topic that I'm going to be covering is how Jay-Z cheating on Beyonce led us into Cowboy Carter, and kind of just running through how the whole era was really formed by that night at the Met Gala, and then Lemonade, and, you know, rolling into how if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be in this 3-act project. I am so excited. You guys know Beyonce is one of my expertise. I love to yap about Beyonce. I do it many of times on this podcast. So the fact that you guys now have the opportunity to come watch me do it in real life, I mean, what's better than that? So tickets are on sale now. I will have them linked below. Like I said, please come out if you are in the area. If you feel like traveling, I would be so thrilled to see any of my listeners in the audience. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to have themed cocktails. They'll have some little light bites. There'll be a question and answer at the end. It's going to be so much fun. And I really hope this is the beginning of me doing more kind of events like this, whether it's my own events that I'm doing or getting invited to guest speak at other people's events. I'm very excited to not be sitting in my living room and talking to a camera, but talking to an audience. I'm so excited for this event. Also, on top of that, my second housekeeping thing is I have officially launched paid content on my Substack. So I obviously, as you guys know, I send out a weekly newsletter called Popping In that just gives you extra moments of the week that were too pop to handle in between podcast episodes. I love Substack, honestly, is a really fun community that I've been building over there. And I really want to start growing that more. And I want to include the podcast listeners there as well. So I now have a paid tier on Substack, $5 a month, or you can pay $50 annually. So you save $10 if you do the annual thing, and you will get one extra piece of content from me every single week. Sometimes it'll be a pop culture essay, maybe a pop culture roundup. I want to start doing some extra bonus podcast episodes. Maybe it's like an extra bonus episode of the rapid fire, or if I do an album review or something like that, that will now all live on my paid Substack tier. Like I said, it is $5 a month, 16 cents a day. It is very affordable. I understand times are tough though, so please do not feel pressured to spend it if you do not have it. But if you are looking for some extra content from your boy, head over to my Substack. I will have it linked down below, and you can now subscribe and subscribe as a paid member and get extra stuff from me. I'm really excited for this new endeavor. This is kind of what I've been teasing last year, if you remember, and I was saying I have some fun things up my sleeve. I've been trying to really refine my Substack and the podcast and kind of how I want to approach, my content in 2026. And this is a really fun and exciting step that I'm taking. So like I said, $5 a month, or you can spend $50 and subscribe for the entire year, and you will get one extra piece of content from me. And you get all of the free stuff as well. So you get the weekly newsletter popping in every weekend. You get my monthly memo that I just started doing, which is just like my monthly favorite things, kind of a way to give more of like a personal touch than just like talking about pop culture, as a way to kind of connect with you guys through just Andrew's lens and not just through pop culture. And I really want to explore different ways to connect with you guys and use this paid tier. So like maybe one week I do something like a live stream or something, or, maybe you guys put in requests for a video or something. I'm going to play around with it. And, really, I want this to be something that it grows and, we continue to turn it into something great. And I'm really excited to now take my Substack and the podcast and kind of merge them together. So some weeks it might be an extra podcast episode. Some weeks it might be a pop culture essay, but nonetheless, it will always be too pop to handle coded. So if pop culture is your thing, it is the place to be. I would seriously appreciate it so much. But again, I know times are tough. If you cannot afford it, I completely understand. Do not feel pressured or like you have to do it. But if you ever feel so inclined, I would be very appreciative of it. But that being said, that was a very long intro. I had a lot to chat about on the docket. Let's get into this week's episode, because there is a lot to chat about. And you guys know the drill. We kick everything off with our Drew releases, our new music releases from last week, and our new releases coming up this week. And we had some very exciting releases in the past week. First up, we had Slater releasing the 5th single from her upcoming album, Worst Girl in America. The single is called Old Technology, and I am loving it. I just have to say, this single run that Slater has had for this album is crazy. The album comes out next month, and I just cannot wait to hear this entire project. Seriously, every single single has been incredible, and this is a crazy single run, and this is no different than anything she's put out. It is so good. It has this kind of dark pop kind of electric sound to it. It's very it's got this haunting kind of verse, and then the chorus and the beat kicks in, and it just adds this crazy extra layer to it. It's so well produced. Slater's production is always something that I'm really impressed by, because she's not afraid to take a risk with it. She's not afraid to do something that might sound a little off to some people, or might not be the most might not be the most like digestible to the like general public, but she just kind of goes for it and does whatever she wants. It's just very fun the way that it kind of like builds up to this chorus and this beat comes in, and it just, the way that she constructs her songs is always really impressive to me. Even if you think of like Crank, where that like chorus, it just has this kind of like this single simple beat underneath it, and then the chorus comes in and it has this like explosive track to it. That's kind of what she's doing with this single. I am loving it. It sounds very reminiscent to me, at least, of Hella Good by No Doubt. But if it went a little more dark pop and electronic, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but like the melody of Hella Good, when I was listening to this song, I was like, I've heard this before, but it's kind of reimagined. And it was kind of giving, if No Doubt did like a dark electronic pop kind of vibe to it. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but as I was listening to it, I just was getting that vibe to it, and I loved it. I am so stoked for this album. I think it's going to be incredible. And I just feel like Slater's on the precipice of a really big year. She's doing a lot of festivals. This album's very highly anticipated, and I'm really excited to see where she takes the rest of this year with this album. I am so excited for this album to come out. It comes out March 27th, the same day that Robin album comes out. So another big day for music this year is going to be actually a month from this Friday. Very exciting. And then we had a release that we have talked about at great length on this podcast. Hilary Duff's very, very highly anticipated comeback album, Luck or Something, came out on Friday. And Hilary Duff is single-handedly healing the inner child in all of us with this new era. It is exactly what all of us millennials needed. It is the perfect bridge from the Hilary that we grew up with, that we knew and loved, that we now still know and love, but there's a grown-up feeling to it. And I've talked at length about how incredible I think this album rollout has been. My first paid piece of content on Substack came out last week, and it's all about the way that Hilary really embraced everything she needed to, the highs, the lows, the cringe, and the way that she approached this album rollout. I go into depth about like what she did to kind of make it feel so age appropriate while still paying homage to her past career, which does stem over 2 decades at this point. So if you're interested in that, like I said, it is now available for my first paid piece on Substack. But this album is it's great. I seriously love it. She's not pretending to be somebody else. You know, she's not coming into this and trying to like rid herself of her past and her old music and her old eras. She's fully embracing it. And it's so true to who Hilary is. And it shines through on this album so much. And what's really cool is like, she's covering topics that all of us are going through at the same time as her, you know, and we grew up with her going through things in our teenage years, and now in our 30s, she's in her 40s. But you know, these are songs about the last 10 or so years of her life. These are all things that we're going through. It's like the anxiety of getting older, the anxiety of maturing and finding out, you know, maybe this friend wasn't the best, or this relationship. She talks about family drama on the album. Like, there's just very real topics that she's talking about. And what I really like about Hilary and her writing is that she's not doing it in like these crazy Shakespearean metaphoric ways, because that's not Hilary. Like, she's not this wordsmith who is very, you know, artsy fartsy with her lyrics. And like, she's very, very literal with her lyrics, and she's not trying to be somebody she's not. I mean, may we not forget one of the greatest pop songs of all time. So Yesterday, If the Light Is Off, Then It Isn't On. She's never been giving us, you know, crazy mind-blowing lyrics. And that's what makes her fun and relatable. We can just listen to it, understand what she's saying. And she's now covering topics that we all can relate to. I love this album. Some of my favorites on it are Future Tripping. Future Tripping, I cannot get enough of. It makes me want to go frolic through a field, even though it's about being anxious and being worried about the future and like tripping about things that haven't happened yet. Sonically, I am sitting there, I'm doing a little two-step. I want to go frolic through a field. I love Future Tripping. Weather for Tennis, my favorite on the album. I said that when I went to her show a few weeks ago, that this was the one I was most excited for. Held up to the standard, and it's the opening track on the album, which is so much fun. I love We Don't Talk. That's the one about Haley. I love You From the Honeymoon. Adult Size Medium. Adult Size Medium that was one I was listening to, and I was like, she's really speaking to our generation and just like us growing up and, you know, being an adult and coming into this new phase of your life. She's really covering just very relatable topics, which is really nice to hear. And, you know, she's really giving us just what we need in pop music. Like, Hilary Duff is what pop music needed right now. And I am so thankful to be alive in this Hilary Duff renaissance. This album is great. And I'm so stoked to see the tour and see everything else she does for this era. She has been absolutely murdering it for this era. Next up, we had a release from Leanne from Little Mix. Speaking about ex-girl group members, her debut album, My Ego Told Me To, came out. And I am so impressed with this entire project. She didn't go into this with an easy vision. She's combining all these different types of genres. We have a little reggae, some R&B, some Afrobeat. Like, she's taking a lot of different genres that they're not crazy, different, but they don't necessarily all fit on one project. Like, you don't go into an Afrobeat album and expect to hear so many other different sounds because a genre like that is so specific to, that kind of sound and that vibe. The way that Leanne put this album together is so impressive, and it feels like such a cohesive body of work. It is incredible. The production on each song is so unique, and each song stands alone as its own kind of individual piece of art. But then when you listen to it all together, you're like, this shouldn't make sense, but it does, because there's a cohesiveness in like the tone and the production where it just flows so perfectly, but you never know what you're going to get with the next track. I'm obsessed. That opening track where that beat comes in, when I first listened, I was like, oh, we are in for a treat. I was like, these Little Mix girls, you guys, they are giving us what we need. And if you think about Little Mix and like their discography, I've been listening to Little Mix a lot lately in the last week after seeing Jade and Leanne releasing. I've just been like, they had such a killer discography. Like, Little Mix was in their fucking bag. And when you look at their discography and all of their projects, they've really covered a lot of different genres. So now when we listen to Jade or Perry or Leanne and their solo endeavors, or if you want to go there with Jessie too, like, she definitely had her own little thing, but we're gonna stick with the three who are still technically the members of the group. But like Jade, Leanne, Perry, when you listen to their solo music, you can understand why Little Mix had so many different eras and genres. And, they really did kind of experiment with different sounds because it was so many different backgrounds coming together, and they really let that shine as a group. So now seeing them all kind of separate, you can be like, oh, I understand where this sound came in because now I can listen to Jade, or I listen to Perry and I get this kind of vibe from Little Mix. Like, it's really cool to see all the puzzle pieces fall together with their solo endeavors. And I like had this moment while I was listening to Leanne's album, and I was like, the Little Mix girls, they know what they're doing in the studio, and I cannot get enough of them. It's wonderful to see them all kind of thriving in these solo endeavors, and I can't recommend any of their projects enough, honestly. They're all truly incredible in their own unique way, and it's really cool to think that they all came together from one girl group and make such different music solo, but work so well together. It's really impressive. My favorites on this album that I just wrote down as I was listening, I love Dead and Gone, Goodbye and Good Morning, Talk to Me Nice, but really the whole album was incredible. I really recommend listening to it. I also love the cover art for it. It's so like rock and roll bad girl kind of vibe. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's very like grungy kind of vibe, and I'm into it. I love the cover art, loving this vibe. Like I said, these Little Mix girls, they are ones to watch. I'm obsessed with them. I always have been, always will be. And then coming up this week, we have a lot of exciting releases. Again, we're in that thick of release season right now. So Vincent, who is a smaller artist, but I've talked about him on the podcast before, and he was on my list of artists to add to your playlist, which is coming soon, I promise. I know I keep saying it, but I'll get there. But he was on my list last year, and I've always loved his music. He's releasing the first single from his upcoming new project. I don't think the album has a name yet, but it's the first single of this new era called Signal. Very excited for this. We also have Blackpink's comeback EP called Deadline, which I'm very excited for. And we have Bruno Mars, The Romantic, coming out this Friday as well. So big releases coming up. I am very excited to dive into them all and chat with you guys next week about them. And that wraps up our Drew releases. So let's keep this ball rolling and get into some pop culture moments of the week that were just too pop to handle. Kicking it off with some very sad news this week. This news literally broke a couple hours ago, and I couldn't not add it to the outline. Robert Jr., who is Mary Cosby's son from The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, has passed away at the age of 23. This story, when I read this headline, I was like, this isn't real. Like, this cannot be real. No way. There was a 911 call for a full arrest or medical emergency, which was followed by a possible overdose. And just knowing what we know about Robert Jr. and his struggles over the last few years, I think it was season 4, I want to say, that they really had that like groundbreaking scene with him that like everybody was weeping over, including myself, where he tells Mary that he's struggling with drugs and he doesn't go a day without getting high. And it's just to think of that being only, that had to be what, 2 years ago, 3 years max, but I want to say 2 years. And then knowing that like he got his divorce and then he was in jail. He just got out of jail at the beginning of this month. Like he's been out of jail for I think less than 3 weeks, to now find out that he has passed away. I'm pretty sure it was an overdose. Their 911 call said that they tried to use Narcan on him, and unfortunately it didn't work. And just knowing the struggles he's gone through, and like the way that Mary and Robert Sr. and they've all kind of tried to get him the help that he needs. And even at the reunion that just aired a couple weeks ago, Mary was like, I haven't seen him because he's in jail, and like that's no way that I want to see my son. But like he was out, he was released, and there's no words to describe this at all. Like it is just such a devastating thing to see, especially because there were so many people rooting for him, so many people that were really trying to champion his recovery and his sobriety and just wanting the best for him. And he had a rough couple of years. He hit a rough patch, and it's just truly, truly devastating. I know that they are in the middle of filming Salt Lake City right now, so they've been reported to halt all production, which is the only way to approach it. There should be no cameras up at all right now for any of the housewives. It just seems just in poor taste. This is just truly devastating. There's no other way to put it, and it's going to be a very difficult watch next season, however they decide to cover it, however they decide to kind of approach it, just because his storyline was really so beloved, and so many people were being seen on TV through his story, whether it was parents who had kids that struggle with addiction, or people who were struggling with addiction themselves, and just being like, wow, a story like this is being told on one of the biggest reality shows right now. It was such a huge moment for the franchise, for Bravo as a network, and for this to be the outcome, it just is not anything you ever want to read. And my heart goes out to everybody, involved in this. This is truly devastating news. I couldn't believe it, honestly. When I read the headline, I was like, this is just, there's no way this is real. Like he was supposed to be on this new trajectory, and it breaks my heart, truly. And you guys know I like to start off our moments from the week that were too pop to handle with the sad stuff, so we can move on and get into some happy stuff. And it feels always like whiplash as I continue on to talk about other things. But kind of, trying to turn this sad train around. Hilary Duff was on Call Her Daddy this week. It feels so dystopian to even go into this and talk about it when that's going on. But I'm not going to just be a sad podcast, I guess. But switching gears and chatting about a Hilary Duff again, she was on Call Her Daddy this week. Another thing that I added to the outline today, because normally I wouldn't. Normally a Call Her Daddy episode isn't something that I'm really tapped into. But when I saw the clip of her talking about the Freaky Friday premiere, I was like, I need to tap in. I need to listen to this entire episode and soak up every minute of it, because you guys know Lindsay Lohan, the It Girl of all It Girls, that is my absolute queen. And Hilary Duff and Lindsay Lohan as a feud is just something that is so millennials just get it. This was like the feud of all feuds. It was like Christina Britney level. Like it was a feud that was it was one to watch. So the fact that Hilary Duff is talking about it in the year 2026, I was so tapped in. So if you don't know the story, I'm not going to give the whole thing, but basically they both were dating Aaron Carter. There was some overlap. They left, he left her for her and this and that, whatever. And at the end of the day, Hilary Duff ended up crashing the Freaky Friday premiere, which in turn, Lindsay Lohan crashed the Cheaper by the Dozen premiere. They went on for their feud for a while, and Lindsay made fun of her on SNL, and Hilary made a statement about it. Then Lindsay went on TRL and was like, I love you, Hilary Duff, this out of nowhere. And, it was just typical Y2K, early 2000s feuds. It was just kind of celebrity culture back then, but it was like, it was a huge deal for millennials. I was waiting for Tiger Beat to read about Lindsay and Hillary and their feud again, because I was like, what is going on? But Alice Cooper basically asked, did you actually crash the Freaky Friday premiere? And she said, yes, I did, obviously. But she did say that Chad Michael Murray invited her to the premiere. So not Chad Michael Murray being messy in these young girls' lives, trying to, pull a fast one over on somebody. And then Alex said, are you surprised that she showed up at the Cheaper by the Dozen premiere? And she said, absolutely not. Her and Lindsay were in a feud that was literally her arch nemesis, as they would say. Of course, she's going to get revenge and come back and, try to steal the spotlight from your premiere. It was just, a sign of the times. And then she shares that her and Lindsay were at a club once, and Lindsay went up to her and said, are we good? And she said, yes, we're good. Let's take a shot. And they took a shot, and they were, celebratory and went all good. And just thinking about them in that era, like 2003 era, Lindsay Lohan, Hilary Duff, and looking at them now and how they're both in such different, mature, grown-up places, it's so wild to think about, like, that was the biggest deal in the world to them back in the day, and it was all over, may he rest, but all over Aaron Carter. Like, that was really the precipice of all of that drama kind of kicking off, and like the impact that they had on pop culture back in the day with this feud was so insane. The fact that Hilary's talking about this in 2026, it is igniting something in me that I knew it was there. Obviously, I was obsessed with the two of them, but like hearing her talk about this, I was like salivating at the idea of just hearing about this feud from the mouth, and like all these years later, ooh, it was so good. She also talked about Ashley Tisdale a little bit, which we talked about at length on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And she basically was saying, like, it hurt to read. You know, it was like you're going on there and it wasn't hard to connect the dots of who you're talking about. And you were saying things that weren't completely true, which we could all kind of draw conclusions that like there was some, you know, some false narratives going around. But she would basically, like, it wasn't a fun thing to live through, but it did kind of roll over. You know, it did have a really big moment at the time when it happened. And now it did really kind of like bubble over and is kind of a thing of the past, even though it was literally yesterday's news. It's crazy the way that the news cycles work these days. But I mean, Hilary Duff talking about Lindsay Lohan in the year 2026, sign me up. I am tapped in. But I mean, say what you want about Alex Cooper, but her asking Hilary Duff about the Freaky Friday premiere is peak journalism. I don't care if you don't like her interview style. I don't care if you don't like the way that she interviews guests and this and that, whatever. Asking Hilary Duff about the Freaky Friday premiere is the exact kind of questions we need in a Hilary Duff interview in the year 2026. And this was for me. This was for us. You know, this is for the Too Pop to Handle girls who care about this shit. And it was perfection. Moving on to the next moment of the week that was Too Pop to Handle, the America's Next Top Model docuseries on Netflix, Reality Check. I watched it over the weekend and I have thoughts. So full transparency, I didn't watch America's Next Top Model. I've seen clips and I've seen episodes here and there, but I've never watched an entire cycle. I know the viral moments, but like I've never watched an entire season of the show. So this really was the most that I've learned about the show in one period of time. You know, this is the most that I've consumed about the show, learned about the show. And it was crazy that it was just kind of like 3 episodes of all of them finger pointing at each other and not taking accountability or not, you know, it was just like a bunch of blame game over and over and over. And it's also important to note that like if America's Next Top Model didn't get that like crazy resurgence during the pandemic and like everybody was watching and commenting on it again in 2020, which they talk about very explicitly in the docuseries, but like if the internet didn't take this and blow it up, who knows when or if we would ever get a docuseries kind of exposing all the things they did wrong on this show. It is really interesting that it's almost like, would this have slid under the rug and kind of like existed in an alternate universe if the internet didn't pick this up during the pandemic and kind of like give it a resurgence and completely just like nitpick at every single thing they did, which they should have, because like, yeah, America's Next Top Model was huge for pop culture and had a crazy influence, but like at what cost, you know? I mean, they were exploiting a girl who got raped. They were glamorizing trauma and harassment. And like, as a society, we also ate it up, you know, like we all were, well, not we, but like the great, you know, it was a huge show. It was doing 2 cycles a year because of how big it was. Like people could not get enough of this show. And like, you could blame Tyra, you can blame the producers, you could blame Miss J and, you know, everyone involved. But it's also like the way that the public was viewing the show and glamorizing it and allowing it is also something to note, because it wouldn't have been so successful if everybody wasn't watching, but it seems as if it was like watching a train wreck and it was just like people could not look away from it. I was also really fascinated at the fact that like this was clearly a takedown Tyra hit piece. Like this was them trying to kind of show and expose Tyra for being a bad person, but Tyra's fully involved in this project and like giving her 2 cents. And to me, it was like Tyra was involved so she could defend herself and kind of, you know, give her case and rest her case, which sure, that's fine. You can, of course, come on and say, hey, it was 2004. It was a different time or whatever year it was. But like watching her be like, oh, the producers chose to air that clip of the girl having sex with a guy that she wasn't giving consent to. And then them literally putting executive producer of America's Next Top Model underneath her name as the byline. It's like, girl, you were set up on this docuseries. And I'm so curious how she was like swindled into doing this, because they fully set her up going into this docuseries to like fully just put a bigger target on her back. Like this was at its core a Tyra takedown piece, but I want to know what they spun it to Tyra as. And they were like, hey, you're going to have the opportunity to do this and talk about this and, clear the air, I guess. But like at the same time, like this is not what that was at all. And it kind of like gave her a taste of her own medicine, because you can now, they were blaming America's Next Top Model on the edit and, the way the producers cut it and edited it. But it's like, that's exactly what they did on this. So I guess it does kind of give her a taste of her own medicine. And all of them, there's so many, like I said, this whole thing was a blame game, like they all were just kind of pointing fingers at each other for 3 episodes and being like, well, you did this. And it's at its core, it's really sad that like a show that was started by Tyra to give people who maybe they wouldn't get to ever walk a runway in their life. Black women didn't have a space in modeling the way that they deserved to. And they call them plus size, but they were 130 pounds at most. And like they wanted them to be 95. That was plus size at the time. But like plus size models and Black models and Asian models and, people who wouldn't necessarily get a spotlight at the time. They weren't the quote unquote standard of beauty at the time. They were giving this opportunity to go on this show and become America's Next Top Model. And, it was so revolutionary in the sense that they were giving these people this spotlight. And Tyra came from a place where like she wasn't always welcome in a room because she was a Black woman and because she was a little tall or she was this or she was that. Like there were things about her that weren't conventionally attractive to the media back then. So at its core, I'm sure Tyra did go into this really wanting to change these girls' lives and give them give them a platform to be seen and give them all these opportunities. But I think once Tyra realized the power that she held with this show and how many eyes were on this show and how these girls were dying to go on the show. I mean, they showed that clip in the city of all the people who were there to audition. It was New Year's Eve style, the way that they had these people in these barricades. Like there are so many people just trying to get an audition for this show to get through, just to be seen on TV and just to get in front of Tyra to do their walk or learn from Tyra or learn from Miss J or get photographed by Nigel. And like, there were it looked like so many opportunities. But I think Tyra just got this like power trip almost where she was like, oh, these people need me. Like she got this sense of like, oh, they're nothing without me. So like, I'm going to make them dance. I'm going to say jump and they're going to ask how high because I can. And it just turned into this like crazy power trip. And even looking at like the judges panel with Miss J. Alexander and Jay Manuel and Nigel, and like they were also given a platform by Tyra, but she also kind of turned on them at some point during the season when Jay wanted to leave and she was like, I can't even believe you would do this. Like, why would you leave my show? And he stayed for 5 more seasons or something. Like, and he was like, she wouldn't speak to me. We didn't talk on set unless the cameras were rolling. Like it really turned into this like power trip by all of them. Miss J. Alexander has a stroke and Tyra doesn't go visit him in the hospital. It's like there was clearly this power dynamic that there was no escaping and it turned into something that was like, I gave you this, I made you who you are, and like, I don't owe you anything from Tyra almost. And I mean, nobody's innocent on the side of the show. No producer, no judge, nobody on this set is innocent because they kind of let it go on. Even if they did try to quit or whatever, like there were things that could have happened and like you could have made a bigger stand for it, but I understand it was a different time. There weren't the same protections for TV crews and things like that. But it is just crazy to like watch the 3 of them, Michelle Alexander, Jay, and Nigel. Now at the end, they're like having that conversation and chatting, and they're going to see Miss J in the hospital. And, the 3 of them are clearly kind of still connected in a way that they'll never have with Tyra again. So again, it's crazy that like this was clearly a Tyra takedown piece that they got Tyra involved in somehow. But like, it was crazy. This was a very eye-opening documentary to watch, especially as somebody who has never watched this show, which is like a piece of culture I never dove into. And there was like part of it, like the first half, I was like, wait, I kind of want to watch this. Like, this is crazy because it seemed so entertaining. And then by the end of the docuseries, I was like, actually, I think I'm okay. Like, I don't need to go watch these girls get exploited. And like, I don't think anyone who watches the show or watched it is a bad person. I don't think that's the point of the docuseries. Like, it was clearly very entertaining. And like, even me, I know so many references from the show just from the internet because it was so impactful. I don't think it makes somebody a bad person to watch the show by all means, but it is crazy that like it was so successful and like it went on for 24 cycles, I'm pretty sure. And it just like got worse and worse. I mean, the girl who was like, my mom got shot and now they make me do a photo shoot as if I got shot. Crazy. Like, it's just really wild what was able to fly on TV back in the day, and like what, you know, the restrictions and like legality. Even if you look at like Jersey Shore, like what they were able to do on Jersey Shore because it was so early stage of reality TV. It's crazy. Real World, you know, all of those shows, even like Fear Factor. Like, yeah, I'm sure Fear Factor was more scripted and whatever, but like even there's some things that they were doing on these shows back in like the early 2000s, like thinking about the landscape of reality TV now, it's so wild how produced it is. And like, again, it is for their safety, but it's like, when you look at things like this, America's Next Top Model, Jersey Shore, things like that, Real World, and you see like what they were doing and how they were acting back then without any regulations. There was nothing protecting them. And like, now there's so many legal things, and it's crazy the way that like the landscape of reality TV has changed, and now being able to look back and like watch it from that lens. Crazy shit, dude. Moving on to our next moment of the week that was too pop to handle, Liza Minnelli. Everybody loves Liza. Some headlines coming out from her new memoir. So I remember talking about this when it was released or announced in like 2024. So her memoir, kids, wait till you hear this, is coming out on March 10th, 2026. It is definitely on my list to read. I am very excited to hear about what's going on in Miss Liza's head. But People published several excerpts from the book in like a cover story about Liza. And the one that's really making waves is the one that's referring to her and Lady Gaga's moment at the Oscars in 2022. And she's talking about the fact that they forced her to sit in a wheelchair. So she says, I was told that it was because of my age and for safety reasons, because I might slip out of a director's chair, which is bullshit. I will not be treated this way, I said. And my co-presenter insisted that she would not go on stage with me unless I was in a wheelchair, Lady Gaga. Then she says, so when I stumbled over a few words, Gaga, who was at my side, didn't miss a beat to play the kind-hearted hero for all the world to see. I got you, she said, leaning down over me. And now I read this and I think back to that Oscars moment and I'm like, I don't think they were wrong for wanting you to be in a wheelchair, because for your safety, it was the best thing to do. Like, what if she was on that stage sitting in a director's chair and she did slip out? What if she did fall and get hurt? Like, it was a live event. There were a lot of liabilities that would have gone with, you know, God forbid she got hurt and fell or something. Like, I don't think it's as personal as she's making it. I do think like the way that she's like, oh, Lady Gaga wanted to be kind-hearted hero for the world to see. It's like, I think Lady Gaga also just understood that like, if you got hurt, it was going to be worse than you being in a wheelchair. And like, it was such a beautiful moment. So to hear that like this is the way that she reviews it and like, or like thinks about it, it's so sad to read. Especially just knowing like Liza is such a huge influence on Lady Gaga, and like she's talked about Liza so many times in her career, and that was such a huge moment for her. And just knowing that it now has this like tainted vision to it. And I also think of like the Drag Race finale last year, it was for season 17. Liza was like the honoree at the end, and she was sitting in that giant throne. Like, she didn't move from the throne for safety reasons. Like, she is somebody, she's sick. She's like normally seen in a wheelchair of some sort, like she's being assisted. Like, I don't get where this evil viewpoint from this is. Like, yeah, I understand that maybe she felt like she was being told what to do or taken advantage of, but it's like, they were just looking out for your safety, Liza. You know, we don't want to see Liza fall. We want to make sure Liza is up and running and doing well. So reading this, I was very shocked to be like, oh, Gaga, who was at my side, didn't miss a beat to play the kind-hearted hero. It's like, she was just trying to help you out, girl. It was nothing personal. She was trying to make sure you stayed in your chair and that you were good to go. And I also imagine that there were plenty of Oscar producers and directors and, you know, people on the Oscars team being like, hey, Gaga, like, you need to make sure she's in the wheelchair, because like, she cannot go out there in a director's chair. This was probably a lot of people who were like in her ear as well, and like being like, she cannot go out in a regular chair. She will slip out of it. I just think it's like really crazy to like put pen to paper of like Gaga, who put me in the wheelchair too. It's like, girl, relax. It was just for your safety. I don't know. I will be reading the book. It's Liza Minnelli. She can obviously do whatever she wants. She's fucking Liza. But I was just like, God damn, talk about holding a grudge. It's been 4 years and you're still talking about this moment. But I am excited to read the book. I will let you guys know what I think about it once I read it. It comes out, like I said, March 10th. So a couple weeks for that. But I am very excited for that book. That's going to be very fascinating. Moving on to the next moment of the week that was too pop to handle. The Met Gala is quickly approaching, and we finally have the dress code. It is fashion is art. Now, we know the exhibit is costume art, but now the dress code for the attendees is fashion is art, which really gives them a lot to play with. There's so many different runways and, designers and collections that are inspired by art in the term of like painters and sculptors and Renaissance paintings and, things like that. Like there's so many runways that have been featured that are like, a Monet on a dress or, modern art come to life on a runway. So there's so many ways that they can really bring this. And I mean, at its core, fashion is art. So like this really does kind of give them like a green flag to do whatever they want, which I'm indifferent about. I don't love when the Met Gala theme isn't super specific. I like when they do kind of give them a camp or they give them dandyism and they tell them to be a little more on the nose. This does kind of feel like fashion is art. It's just like, okay, cool. So they can literally wear whatever they want. Like this is what Lady Gaga was wearing in 2009 with the bubble dress and things like that. It's very like wear whatever you want, but I hope people really go for it with this, well, I can't think of the name, what I'm trying to say. I hope people really go for it with this dress code. There it is. Obviously, my mind immediately goes to Beyonce, because when does my mind not immediately go to Beyonce? But she was wearing Met Gala level outfits on the Renaissance tour every single night. I mean, every city she was in, she was wearing a designer from that city. And like those outfits were incredible. Cowboy Carter was also incredible, but I feel like Renaissance with a little more avant-garde, or not avant-garde, but a little more. Cowboy Carter was like a sparkly tank top and denim shorts. They were stunning and like she did really cool stuff. And there were some outfits on Cowboy Carter that were a lot more intricate, but like Renaissance is really where she pulled out some crazy outfits, which makes more sense. The Renaissance album and like ballroom, Vogue, fashion is a lot more on the nose than Cowboy Carter, where it's a country tour. So it makes a lot more sense for that. But like, I cannot wait to see what Beyonce wears to the Met Gala this year. Like she has so much fun with fashion already. And like, she's such a Met Gala darling. Like she was at the Met Gala for years, every single year. And it really does tie back to a huge moment in her life. That moment in the elevator where like Solange beat the shit out of Jay-Z was at the Met Gala. And like, she hasn't been to the Met Gala since 2016. And there's just so much that has happened in her life since she last went to the Met Gala. So like thinking about what Beyonce is going to wear to the Met Gala as a co-chair, my God, I cannot wait. I am so excited for the Met Gala this year. I mean, Venus Williams, Nicole Kidman, obviously all the co-chairs are very exciting, but like Beyonce going to the Met Gala is like Jesus rising from the grave. This is massive and I cannot wait for the first Monday in May. Oh my God, it's going to be incredible. The next moment of the week that was just too pop to handle, Manon has announced that she will be leaving KATSEYE, or taking a hiatus at least. Over the weekend, her record label released a statement saying, "Hello, after open and thoughtful conversations together, we are sharing that Manon will be taking a temporary hiatus from group activities to focus on her health and well-being. We fully support this decision. KATSEYE remains committed to showing up for one another and for the fans who mean everything to us. The group will continue scheduled activities during this time, and we look forward to being together again when the time is right. Thank you to our icons for your continued love, patience, and understanding." So this comes out and immediately everybody is like, this is strange, because Manon is the only Black girl in the group and she has famously been kind of pushed to the side. Unfortunately, it's just kind of the harsh truth of it. If you look at a lot of different videos of them performing, Manon is always in the back. She's covered by the other girls. On red carpet, she's sometimes pushed to the side and she's not always in the center. A lot of fans, unfortunately, there is racism engraved in some people and they are calling her lazy and trying to hold her to different standards, saying she's not performing to the same level as the other girls. And, she's spoken out about it and said things in other interviews, but she did make a statement saying that sometimes things unfold in ways we can't fully control, but I'm trusting the bigger picture. She also did like a video that one of my mutuals, Simone, the Simply Simone on Instagram and TikTok, posted, kind of basically confirming that it was about the racism that she was experiencing online, which just breaks my heart for anybody to have to go through in 2026. Like, it is just such a crazy concept to me that people still are thinking this way. I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. I know that racism, homophobia, obviously that all exists, especially under our current administration. But the way that it's just like normalized, and like now Manon has to like leave the group. It's just crazy. What I didn't realize though is that she was the one who was scouted on Popstar Academy. So like all the other girls were in like, and I've but like a lot of the girls were like auditioning and doing like that traditional K-pop group trajectory where they're in those boot camps and they're rehearsing all the time and they're like molding this group. Manon was the only one who was scouted by the agency or the talent group, whoever it is. So the fact that like she was the one that they reached out to and tried to like get into the group, it's just giving like, and this sounds awful to say, but it's giving like token black girl in the group to just like say that they had somebody who is black in the group. And of course, as a white man, this is not something that I can just like speak to from a personal level, but just from like history repeating itself. Look at like Normani in Fifth Harmony or Leanne in Little Mix, you know. Of course, there's other races in these groups, even KATSEYE, you know, but it's like there is a common thread here with, you know, the black members of the group. And she did an interview with The Cut a couple months ago, and she said that being called lazy, especially as a black girl, is not fair. Now I feel like I always need to put in extra work to prove something, even though I really don't. So for her to be so aware of this and know the conversations happening online, it's really just so like people really need to be ashamed of themselves. Like I said, we saw this with Little Mix with Leanne. She did that documentary in like 2021. She was saying how like she was ignored in meet and greets and she always felt the pressure to work harder because everybody was watching her while the other bandmates would receive all this outpouring love and affection, but yet she needed to work harder and she was like the one who was getting ignored at a meet and greet or at an event or things like that. Normani was a whole nother thing with Fifth Harmony. She like said something, I think she called like Camila quirky, if I remember correctly, and people bullied her and said she was like mean to Normani and bullied her and like said really nasty things to her, making her delete her Twitter. And this, even if you want to go back further to like the 90s, the Spice Girls, Mel B is the only black girl in the group and her name is Scary Spice. They have Baby Spice, Ginger Spice, Posh Spice, like all of these like cutesy whatever names, and the one black girl gets named Scary Spice. Like, sure, yeah, maybe she has a little attitude or whatever, but like scary, it's like I'm sure it wasn't their intention, but it's like you can't see that and see all these other timelines and be like, huh, that's a little interesting. But it really does kind of like open your eyes and open up this conversation of like, how are these labels and these management groups protecting these girls in these groups who are unfortunately at a higher risk of this online hate or in person being ignored or being held to a different standard or being called lazy? It really makes you wonder, like, and it shows the true colors of like what their goals are with these girl groups. Like it is kind of just like, they're like, oh, well, they're going to make us money. Who cares what happens kind of thing. But it's like the fact that like girls are having to leave groups and take hiatuses because of this is really just really wild. And I mean, this isn't just reserved for black women. Of course, this happens to just women in general, but you know, the common thread at hand right now is that these are the black members of these groups. And as somebody who is a huge fan of these girl groups and is a huge fan of just, you know, supporting women and seeing, you know, any type of uplifting in these situations, like knowing that even in a situation where it's all about like girl power and, you know, feminism and things like that, it's like, why is this such a common thread there? You know, like, why are we continuing to see this happen because of the color of their skin and the fans being the fact that the fans are so okay being openly racist towards someone is so disgusting. And really, like, again, I'm not naive, I'm not stupid. I know that racism is very alive and well, unfortunately. Like, I grew up on Long Island. I know that racism is very present in today's world, but like seeing it on a level like this, especially in a girl group like KATSEYE, that there's a bunch of different races in this group, and you know, they are all from different backgrounds and different ethnicities. So it's like to know that like Manon is the one who's getting the hate right now, and it's like, you know, you're not stupid. You can't sit there and be like, I wonder why. Like, come on, grass is green, the sky is blue. We know why this is the issue at hand in the situation. And it's really just sad to watch this unfold. However, it has been really nice to watch all of the love and support that she's gotten from other girls in the industry, like other black girls in the industry. I know like Chloe Bailey reached out, SZA reached out, Leanne made a comment. Like, we're seeing a lot of support from the black pop girl community. And it's nice to see the that they're all banding together and like they have each other's back there when unfortunately a large part of society does not. But I'm curious to see like when she goes back to the group. They're doing Coachella this year. They're doing GovBall this year. They're doing like a lot. They're doing a bunch of international festivals. I know like the Lollapalooza junket they're on. So I'm curious to see like when she returns on like how they do it, because I really feel like there's like three ways that they can approach her going back. Number one, she goes back to the group and she isn't put in the back anymore, which the fact that the choreographers were putting her, like there are videos that you can watch and you're like, there's 5 members in this group and out of nowhere, there's a hand behind the one in the lead and you're like, oh, there is one back there. If the choreographer can't choreograph for 6 people, don't choreograph a girl group. Like the fact that there were so many instances in live performances and music videos that Manon was fully covered by the other girl groups. And it's not like she was covered because of the angle. It is straight on camera work and you cannot see her behind the other girls. It is really, really, really disgusting. It's not even crazy. It's disgusting the way that like they kind of just made her like non-existent within the group. Either she goes back and they stop doing that bullshit and they completely re-choreograph things and they change things. She goes solo with an all new team and just like crushes it and becomes like, you know, her own solo endeavor and just like, you know, shows these bitches who the fuck she is, or we never hear from her again. Like there's really like, there's 3 outcomes to this and I'm really curious where she takes it. There was somebody on TikTok who said they ran into her, I think at like Gaga over the weekend or like at a concert in LA. And they were like chatting with her and she seemed in good spirits. Like she seems fine. I think she just needs a little break. She's fine. Her health is fine. But it's sad to see, but I'm hoping that she kind of takes this time to just like recharge a little bit and be like, you know what? Like I'm in that group just the way the other girls are. They scouted me. I'm just as talented. And like, I don't give a fuck what these people say. I'm in KATSEYE and they're not, so they can kiss my ass. And unfortunately, the topic of racism kind of segues us into the next and final topic of the week, which I'm sure everybody knows exactly what I'm going to be talking about. The BAFTAs. So if you have not seen, I don't know how you have not seen what's been going on with the BAFTAs right now. It's some shit. Like it's some crazy shit. So basically, John Davidson was in the audience and he is the subject of the movie I Swear, which ended up winning 2 BAFTAs. He has Tourette's. He's been a huge advocate for Tourette's and for, you know, actors with disabilities still being able to get the same opportunities, which is great and a beautiful story. At the beginning of the show, and like I said, the movie that was nominated is based on his life. It's like a biopic, basically. So at the beginning of the show, they make an announcement and say, hey, a member of the audience does have Tourette's. You may experience some tics as the show goes on. Don't be alarmed. It's just his disability and we are here to welcome him and make him feel comfortable, which I think is like a great way to handle that. You know, hey, this might happen. And I think John also understood like, hey, this needed to happen. So it wasn't just like alarming if he started yelling things out, which isn't his. He literally cannot control it. It's a neurodivergent thing, you know, he couldn't control that. And people in the audience have now come out and been like, yeah, you know, it was happening throughout the night and there were different things he was saying. I think he yelled like, shut the fuck up to one of the people who was like the main person of the BAFTAs and was like yelling other things at people. But the thing that is really making the waves and there's a real big conversation is while Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who are both from Sinners, were presenting best visual effects, he screamed the N-word in a complete moment of silence. Now, I will say Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo handled it so incredibly professionally. You could tell they were a little startled. I actually haven't watched the video with audio on because it seems that's a little jarring to watch. I don't need to hear a white man scream the N-word at black people. Like that's just not something I'm interested in tuning into, but I've seen the reaction from him, you know, on GIFs or whatever. And they handled it very professionally, which is very, it's a show of their character and like understanding what was happening in the audience and knowing that this wasn't a racist thing and, you know, ill intent thrown towards them. But Alan Cumming comes out and he was hosting the show and he makes a statement saying that Tourette syndrome is a disability and the tics you've heard tonight were involuntary, which means the person who has Tourette has no control over their language. We apologize if you were offended tonight, which we'll circle back to in a second. John obviously knew this was making people uncomfortable and removed himself from the room. He made a statement and he said, I was hoping people would understand. My mind was saying these people have seen the film. They will know I can't help this. They know it's not me. This is exactly why we are here. I was saying in my head, please don't judge me. Please understand this isn't who I am. Now, from my understanding, this specific tic with the N-word happened 3 times to the cast of Sinners. Hannah Bleacher, who is a production designer on the movie, went to Twitter and said that the situation is almost impossible, but it happened 3 times that night, and one of the 3 times was directed at myself on the way to dinner after the show. A 3rd time at a Black woman, and I understand and deeply know why this is an impossible situation. I know we must handle this with grace and continue to push through. But what made the situation worse was the throwaway apology of if you are offended, which is exactly what the issue at hand is. So there's think pieces upon think pieces upon think pieces about this on the internet right now. And on one hand, people are being racist about this. On the other hand, people are being ableist about this. And I'm not here to be either of those things because I understand that John Davidson has Tourette's. He cannot control his tics. That is literally what Tourette's syndrome is. He cannot control what comes out of his mouth. He doesn't choose his tics. It's not that these are words that he uses in his day-to-day vocabulary, and that is what is now coming out of his mouth. It is not his fault that this is what was said. On the other hand, every Black person in that room, every Black person watching, Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, like every Black person in that room and everyone in that room should have felt uncomfortable in that moment. That is a word that is not to be said ever, especially not in a room like that. You know, the BAFTAs are a night that are celebrating the arts, and it is a huge celebration of the best of the year. And he was an honoree because the movie was about him. Doesn't make the fact that, like, yeah, it did make the room a little uncomfortable. And like I said, you cannot control what you're saying, what you're doing when you have Tourette's. You know, John met the queen and literally said, fuck the queen to her face. Like, he cannot control his tics. They are, on paper, they are inappropriate. Of course, to call his tics inappropriate is ableist, and I'm not doing that. But the statements that he's saying otherwise would be categorized inappropriate. Again, not in his control. I am not blaming him for his tics. What can be controlled, however, is the way that the BAFTAs handled this, and they did not handle this the right way at all. First of all, having Alan Cumming come out and saying, if you're offended by this, was the complete wrong choice in wording. It's not an if, it's just an apology. Giving an if means that, like, saying if you're offended, it's like, you shouldn't be, but if you were, like, here's a Band-Aid to put over it. And this was clearly not Alan Cumming saying this himself. This was written for him, and knowing the rest of the story about the BAFTAs and how they handled a lot of other things, it's clear that, like, if Alan didn't go out and say it exactly how they wanted, it wouldn't have been aired properly, and, like, it would have been completely switched up and cut up and changed. John did end up making multiple statements throughout the week. He's been doing a little press and just kind of, you know, trying to make amends with what happened. And he said, I want to thank BAFTA and everyone involved in the awards last night for their support and understanding and inviting me to attend the broadcast. I appreciated the announcement to the auditorium in advance of the recording, warning everyone that my tics are involuntary and are not a reflection of my personal beliefs. I was heartened by the round of applause that followed the announcement and felt welcomed and understood in an environment that would normally be impossible for me. And, like, at its core, the fact that somebody who has been an actor with Tourette's was able to become now the subject of a BAFTA nominated movie and end up winning too is an incredible story. Like, it is beautiful to see a syndrome like this that, you know, they don't get the opportunities that other people would because maybe they are a little more difficult to work with to these directors and they don't want to give them the opportunities because of that. And the fact that, like, his story was so moving and so worth retelling that, like, he's even able to see the retelling of his story while he's still alive. You know, it's not like he passed away and they're like, oh, let's honor him. Like, they're like, no, he's done great work for the community and for, you know, this disability and this syndrome that, like, his story deserves to be told now so we can watch the legacy kind of live on. And I'm seeing a lot of people online saying the least he could have done is mention Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo's name. And I see both sides of that, but, like, if he mentioned their name, he would have to mention every single person's name in that room. And then that becomes a situation where it's like, oh, he has to apologize to every single person because of a disability, which then makes his disability the conversation of he shouldn't have been in the room almost because he has to apologize for something that he can't control. So I understand that take to a degree, but I do think that opens up a can of, like, oh, he has to apologize to now every single person, and it's now making a bigger deal out of this syndrome that he has that, like, he literally cannot control. Like I said, what they could control was the BAFTAs, and they released a statement and they said, we take care of the duty of our guests very seriously and start from a position of inclusion. We took measures to make those in attendance aware of the tics, announcing to the audience before the ceremony began and throughout. They said that John was in the room and you might hear strong language. And they just kind of, they apologized to Michael and Delroy for that and appreciate their professionalism. They do mention that during the ceremony, John chose to leave the auditorium and watch the rest of the ceremony from a screen. And we would like to thank him for his dignity and consideration of others on what should have been a night of celebration for him. They say we take full responsibility for putting our guests in a very difficult situation and apologize to all. We will learn from this and keep inclusion at the core of all we do, maintaining our belief in film and storytelling as a critical conduit for compassion and empathy. And now I totally agree with the fact that John excused himself and went to go watch it from another room was very admirable on his part. He knew, hey, this isn't my fault, but I do need to excuse myself because now it is getting to a point that I'm making people uncomfortable. I think John handled this the best way that he could. I really do. I think John, Michael, Delroy, and all the people involved handled this in a very professional and respectable way that shows their character and shows that they understand, though this was wrong, there was also no controlling this, and there was no way that John could have controlled what came out of his mouth. My biggest issue is why not edit this out? Why not edit this insanely offensive slur? Now, I don't think there was ill intent behind him saying it because, again, he cannot control this and that is not his fault. But the fact that they were editing out other award winners saying free Palestine, they edit out the homophobic slur that he yelled at Alan Cumming. I just am like, why pick and choose what you're editing out? If you're gonna edit things out, edit everything out. And editing out free Palestine, editing out a homophobic slur, you are now being selective in what is offensive and what is allowed to be aired on your network and during your show. Because if you don't know, the BAFTAs happen 2 or 3 hours before the actual show. So they have time to cut it down. It's not aired live. They have time to edit it. And it's they could have just edited out his moment and the slur and not made everybody watching the award show have to hear that be screamed at two very well-respected Black men in Hollywood, especially considering the movie that Michael and Delroy are on this junket for. It's This Is for Sinners, which is a movie that is also very deeply rooted in racism and Black culture. It's they could have edited it out and just at the beginning put a disclaimer and said during tonight's ceremony, there was a member of the audience with Tourette's, similar to what they announced beforehand. They could have just made a statement before. And then if it did seem if Michael and Delroy seemed a little uncomfortable and it didn't flow well during the speech, right before they come back from the commercial break before their segment, put it again, put another statement and just say it. I think putting that in the broadcast and airing the N-word to millions of people watching this is such a clear depiction of the way that they view and respect Black people. And I think it's really, really vile that they didn't think to cut that out, but they're protecting people of Israel by cutting out free Palestine, and they're protecting gay people, which thanks, I guess. But I don't want your sympathy edit if you're not going to protect all people and minorities and things like that. It's you don't get applauded because you did half the work. It's no, you also should have respected the Black community and cut out somebody screaming the N-word, whether he meant it or not. And he did not. I want to really buckle down on that and make sure you guys understand. I know that John Davidson did not say the N-word because he is a racist person. I know it's because he has Tourette's and that is his tick. And it's just an unfortunate tick. Just call it what it is. I just think they handled it so incredibly wrong. And it's just another reminder, similar to the whole Manon situation. It's just a reminder that racism is so alive and well. And in the administration that we're currently under, it's almost applauded. And it's just really, really disheartening to watch. And I applaud Michael and Delroy for the way that they handled it. I applaud the entire Sinners cast and every Black person in that room for the way that they handled it, because that's a very, very top of the list offensive words you can say to anybody. And your instinct should be to be what the fuck did you just say? And get a little defensive. And if, but they knew the situation, they understood it, and they were able to be hey, no, this is not pointed at me. It's just an unfortunate turn of events. But I just think the BAFTAs really handled this in such a poor way. And it really puts a sour taste in my mouth. And also not for nothing, if they would have edited it out, there would have been other stories about the BAFTAs making headlines. But really, there's nothing else from the BAFTAs making headlines because of how severe this was. And like, had they just edited it out and like made a different approach to it, they would have had other headlines. I don't know who won anything. I don't know a single winner from the BAFTAs. All I know is like Gracie Abrams and Paul Mescal walked the carpet. I think Timothy and Kylie were there, but I'm honestly not sure. And like, that's all I got. Usually I at least know like who was there, who won, who was this, who was that. I know nothing. And honestly, I don't want to look up who won at the BAFTAs this year, because if they're not going to be fully inclusive in the sense of like they're protecting this person for this and that person for this, is like, you can't be selective of when you're going to be supportive and an ally to a marginalized group. You know, like that's not how it works. That's literally not being inclusive to all. And it's like, yeah, sure, they were being respectful to John and, you know, uplifting people who have Tourette's. And I understand that. But like, why was there a microphone placed in front of the man? Like, why did they put a microphone so close to him knowing he was going to be shouting things? Don't make a statement then. If you're going to put a microphone in front of the man, it wasn't directly in front of his face, but it was close enough where it was picked up to be projected throughout the theater. Like, this was very just poorly handled, and it's really upsetting to watch such a huge night get so tainted because of the way they made this stupid mistake. Really disappointing. Really, really disappointing. The Manon situation of it all, it's just like, unfortunately, like a theme of this week is racism, and it's really disheartening in the year 2026 that these are conversations that are still being had in a way that isn't like, I don't know. It's very crazy to me. But moving on to our next and second to last segment of this week's episode is our TV recap. Now, typically we would be recapping Drag Race right now, but I have not done my homework. I am so sorry. I have not watched Drag Race yet this week. I just was going through, you know, I wasn't in the mood or the mindset to consume Drag Race. And I know I was snowed in. I have no excuse, but I'm sorry. I'll catch up. I'll watch. However, I do know who the bottom two were, and I do know who sends who home. And I am pissed off about it. Like, I didn't watch the episode. I don't know how they performed in the episode. I don't know their runways. I don't know the song. I don't know what put them in the bottom, but like the fact that Kenya Pleaser sent me a star home feels so incorrect to me, because like, I'm sorry, Kenya, she's given us enough reasons as to why she shouldn't be there anymore. And again, I've said this before. I think she's very talented. I think she is gorgeous, but like, there are things that aren't making her America's next, I almost said America's next top model, America's next drag superstar. And like, I just think the track record that she has, and Michelle and Rue calling her out for never knowing her lip sync words, definitely outweighs anything Mia Starr has done. So again, I haven't watched the episode yet, so I do need to still tune in. I don't know who won. I only know a few of the people who did Snatch Game. Like, I only know their characters a little bit. Like, I need to actually tune in and watch it. So I will catch up. We'll do a quick recap next week before we do the other episode. However, I did watch Traitors. Murdering Kristen, I understand why they did it, but it could have really put a giant target on Eric's back to Mark, because Mark was there when they were saying it. And I'm shocked that they took a risk so late in the competition this big. Like, that was a huge risk. It really could have backfired. And I think it slowly will. I mean, we have one episode left, so I don't know what they're going to be able to, there's no more roundtable. So like, I don't know, but it does come down to like that final fire pit where they're like, nope, this person, and they kind of are able to try to like volley some traitors out, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Tara and Natalie this episode, I'm rooting for Rob at this point. I think we all are rooting for Rob at this point because he played such a great game, but Tara was on it. Like, she was fully onto him, and I really thought she was going to convince everybody else to vote for him at the round table. She convinced Natalie and then totally turned on her. I was like, girl, you can't do that. You fully just like put a giant target on your back now. Like, luckily there's no more roundtables, but the fact that she fully convinced Natalie to go for Rob and then completely backed out of it at the roundtable and put a big target on Natalie's back, I didn't like that. And I've been rooting for Johnny and Tara this entire season. Like, for a long time, I've been saying I love the two of them. I want them to really take the lead and like be ringleaders, but like, this is not what I meant. You know, I did not mean it like this. That was really fucked up. I can't believe how whipped Maura is to Rob. I cannot believe the way that she will like not budge on him being a traitor. She is convinced that he is a faithful, and like that just goes to show Rob is playing an incredible game. He did slip up a bit during the challenge, like Mark called out, because I do think he was a little too emotional when he didn't get the shield. I think that was not smart to do, because it's like, why suddenly do you really need a shield if for the whole rest of the game you haven't cared? But I guess, you know, they are far along enough in the competition where like Rob could be like, oh, well, I just don't want to go home at this, you know, I've made it this far, blah, blah, blah. So he does have a case there, but like that was bold of him to do. And then we get to the round table and they all turn on Natalie, and Natalie gets voted out and yet another faithful gets sent home. Rob and Eric are running this castle. Really Rob, but like Eric is now in there with him. They are running this game, and I will be shocked if the Traitors don't end up winning this season. Like, there is no world where the two of them don't sweep after this week, because it's the finale. Like, there's one episode left. Pretty much everybody's name in the castle has been thrown around at this point. And it's like, I don't see them getting both of them out in this episode. I really don't. I think we're going to see the Traitors win. But next week, we'll do a Traitors finale recap and chat all about it, because it's been a good season, a very good season. I'm really excited to see how this pans out and like how this all ends. But that will be for next week, because obviously it hasn't aired yet. It's coming out tomorrow when I'm recording this, tonight, if you're listening to this on release day. But yes, that is the Traitors this week. We have one more episode left. It's been a fun season to recap with you guys. But with that means we have made it to the end of this week's episode, and it is time for my yes and my mess of the week. We end every episode at Too Pop to Handle with a yes and a mess. A yes being something I am loving, and a mess being something I am not loving. And we always start on a high note. And my yes and my mess this week are kind of tied together. They're cut from the same cloth, if you will. And my yes this week is Alyssa Liu. What a diva. Now, full transparency, I did not know who she was before last week. I'm not like up on the Olympics, honestly. It's not something that I like fully tune into. But once I saw her all over the internet, I was like, why are people going nuts about this girl? I cannot get over how incredible she is. If you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm sure you've seen her all over your Instagram or TikTok feed this week, because she is going insanely viral. She was part of the women's US figure skating team, and she just crushed it. Her routines were great. Her just like attitude, her spirit, her personality, everything has just been so incredible from her. And she, like, even her whole story, she stopped figure skating a couple years ago because she didn't like how toxic it was, and kind of similar to America's Next Top Model, like the way that they had to like starve themselves and be skinny and act this way or act that way. And then she was like, no, I'm not going to let you guys ruin my passion and what I'm good at because you don't want me to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way. And now she is crushing it. All of her routines were so much fun. You could just tell how happy and proud she is to be on the ice. I'm obsessed with her. The internet is obsessed with her. Truly, like, if you have not watched any of her routines, please go watch all of them. They are all truly incredible. I believe she did 4 routines this week. She did a Donna Summer song. She did a Beyonce song. She did Stateside, Zara Larson, and Pink Pantheress. And she did, oh my God, I'm blanking, a Leve song. All of them beautiful, incredible. And even like at the end of it, at one of them, she's like, let's fucking go, or whatever she said. And they couldn't bleep it because they weren't expecting it. And I love the way the entire world has rallied around our close little friend, Alyssa Liu. Like, she deserves this, and I am loving all of this content. And now switching gears, like I said, cut to the same cloth, the U.S. men's hockey team. You know, we have the U.S. women's hockey team killing it. We have Alyssa Liu. We have all these people, all these women crushing it for the U.S. in the Olympics. And then the U.S. men's hockey team has to go and embarrass us, because not only are they making jokes and laughing about the women's hockey team, kind of completely disregarding the fact that they also won gold and are also incredible, they're doing it while they're on the phone with Donald fucking Trump. And they're doing it while they have the director of the FBI drinking in the room with them. It's like, could you be more of a loser? Like, could you be more of a group of weenies doing all of these just like stupid, embarrassing things? And like, I will say 5 of them did not go to the White House. 4 of them did have a game, so they couldn't make it. So whether they didn't want to go or couldn't go, I will give it to them that they weren't there. And like, big shocker, men disappointing us, like whatever, but like, I'll give it to them. But it was just so embarrassing how excited they were to be talking to Donald Trump. It's like, can you guys not? Like, why are we so thrilled to be talking to this literal monster? Just big loser behavior from the U.S. men's hockey team this week. And like, Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov would never. And that is why we are watching Heated Rivalry and we're not cheering for the U.S. men's hockey team. And that is my mess this week, which means we have made it to the end of this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Too Pop to Handle. Again, if you would like to come see me in New York City on March 21st, I would love to have you all there. Tickets will be linked in the description down below, or you can find them on my newsletter, on my Instagram. You can find it anywhere. Basically, I'm posting about it like crazy. Tickets are on sale now. Please come out. I would love to see you guys there. Also, like I said, head over to our Substack to get some extra content from me every single week. I'll have that link down below as well. If you liked what you heard and you're listening to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever podcasts are available, please go ahead and leave me a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, everything but dislike. You guys know the drill by now. And of course, if you want more moments of the week that were just too pop to handle, you can always follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Too Pop to Handle, or on my personal at Andrew Nucatola. And with that, I will catch you guys next week. Bye.